everybody, welcome back to 100 Blocks in 2025. Hey, last video we did a block that had 21 pieces in it, and that seemed like complete overkill for a 6.5 inch block. So this week I thought we would maybe relieve ourselves, take a deep breath, and give ourselves something really super simple to do. Practice our pinning and practice our 1/4 inch seam, and also maybe give ourselves a break and catch up a little bit on some of our colors and some of our blocks. So let's take a look at what we're gonna do. Surprise, surprise, it is a 9-patch block. Super easy, super simple. It is block number 82 on page 183 in Tula's book, but this is not really necessary for us to do a lot of viewing on the book today. It is a simple 9-patch. So right here I have some red squares, a dark square and a light square, and you can lay your block out any way that you want, with your dark on the outside and your light on the inside, or vice versa. So we'll lay a couple out like that, and you let me know how you think you might want to put your squares together. So this is how we're going to do it, just like a dice with the number 5, or a die with the number 5 on it. You're just going to lay your one set of squares. You'll need 5. These squares are 2.5 inches, by the way, so we can get to 6.5. So you're going to lay one of them in an outside, then an inside, then an outside pattern, and the other one goes in the empty space. Now you could do them exactly the opposite, and I went to show you exactly what I meant by that, but I realized what I did, because I'm kind of a traditional girl, is I made all of my outsides the dark fabric and didn't make any of my insides the dark fabric. So, but Tula did, so let's look at her book and you can see what I'm talking about. So in this case, by using the dark fabric on the inside and their lighter fabric on the outside, you get this very distinct sort of plus sign. And by using the dark fabric on the outside and the light fabric on the inside, you get this very distinct, like 5-patchy type look. So that's kind of how I did all of my pieces. And I went ahead and did mine with the dark on the outside. It's very traditional that way, and stayed away from that little plus sign in the center. And so I went ahead and cut a couple extra blocks. And here's where we're going to catch up a little bit on some of our blocks. So I've actually got a few that are cut, and I'm going to go ahead and sew these together. So in this case, when we're putting together our 9-patch, as you've probably seen before, I'm actually going to sew my rows together and press my seams to the dark, which means my outside seams will be pressed, or my top seam will be pressed out, as will my bottom, and my center row will be pressed in, and that will allow me to be able to lock those seams so that I will get nice, perfect, straight rows when I go to sew them together. So let's test out that theory. And what I'll do is I'll bring the strips back over and I'll show you how I pin and lock those seams so we can get our perfect 9-patch blocks. All right, guys, I am back and I've sewn all my rows together. And as you can see, my top row, I've got my seams pressed out towards the dark. This row, my seams are pressed in, and then I repeated pressing out here. And this is sort of my pinning technique so that I make sure all my rows are nice and even. So I'm going to change cameras here. I'm going to get my pins out. And by the way, if you don't have one of these, this is the new Gypsy Quilter magnetic pin cup. I love this thing. So I've unscrewed the cap so it keeps it from falling off in my bag. And then if you just kind of twist this, the pins come up and they're facing up. So no more trying to grab them with your hands. If you have mobility issues, it's really great. I'll link it in the description box so you can see it. So I'm going to lay my top row down on my second row, and then I'm looking for those 2 seams which are pressed in opposite directions to nest really nicely. And then I'm going to take one of my pins and I'm actually going to insert it about 1/4 inch down from the seam line, but up at an angle, so I actually pin through the seam line. And that's going to hold my parts together really nicely so that I can drive my sewing machine right down here and put my needle right there in the stitching line without running over my pin. I can stop and pull the pin out, and then I can hold that seam really perfectly, but I don't have to drive over my pin, and I can get it out of there. So the same thing, I'm going to come down to this one, nest those seams together, pin down about 1/4 of an inch and up at an angle, and I just get used to doing that. So this is what it looks like when it's going through your sewing machine. So now I'm going to drive right here, put my needle in, pull the pin out, drive here, put the needle in, pull the pin out, and that's how I get my nice straight rows. So I'm going to go ahead and sew those using that method, and then we'll come back here and I'll show you what my rows look like when we're done. All right, everyone, and we're back, and I've got my blocks here to show you, and I thought we'd get right up tight and close to them so that you can see what those center seams look like. So here you go. There is the alignment of those center seams, and you can see I have a nice, clean, straight line in both directions where nothing is really overlapped. And you can see it maybe even better on the pink. So that pinning technique works super, super well to keep these rows nice. And if you've been a member of the channel for a while and you saw all the rows of half square triangles that I made last year doing our 2024 temperature quilt, you'll know that I used that and implemented that technique over and over again when making those rows and got these perfect lines. So that is a great way to pin in order to keep all your little rows for blocks like this where the row is and the seams are very pronounced. It helps keep everything in alignment. Now, in addition to these two beauties, I also made a red and a pink. I also made a green, and I also made this guy right here, which I said earlier that I didn't think I had made a block that had the dark in the center, but here it is right here. Here's a dark in the center. So I wound up making 4 because these were easy blocks to make. So this block is number 74 for me. So 74, 75, 76, 77, we are really making our way through. And if you are in any way trying to catch up on this this challenge and you need a way to do that, well, if I have 8 colors behind me and I did one of every color, I would have another additional 8 blocks to do right now. In this case, I only made 4, but it boosted us a little bit further and closer to our deadline, which I really like. So go ahead and feel free to do that, and you can make one, like I said, in every color, and now you know a perfect pinning technique to get those perfect rows. So I hope you really enjoyed this video. I hope that the pinning technique was helpful to you and setting your 1/4 inch seam was helpful. If you need to know anything else, let me know in the comments what you're looking for and what challenges you're having with your sewing so we can incorporate those into these videos. And until next time, happy quilting, and come find me on the web at cabinquilters.com.